that's what I was talking about. Okay, so I went to grade 9 at the public school in Champion, but for high school, all of the students had to be bused to Vulcan, which is about 15 minutes away from Champion. And I didn't want to go to Vulcan. Partly because there was this thing called initiation in grade 10 in Vulcan, and I had experienced initiation in junior high, and it was the most humiliating, traumatic thing. I'm still scarred. And so I did not want to go to school in Vulcan and have to go through initiation again. I don't know, do they still do that? Or is it illegal now? I don't know, but initiation is terrible. So I begged God to give me an out. I said, God, please, I don't know how you're going to do it, but I don't want to go to Vulcan. I don't want to go to high school in Vulcan. You know, what I'd really like is a Christian school here in Champion that I could go to. Well, little did I know that I was echoing my grandmother's prayers. Because a generation before, when my grandmother was in Champion, she had prayed for a Christian school there. And here I am, her granddaughter, praying the same thing. So really, I was just saying amen to her prayers. And I talked to my dad about it, and I said, is there any way we can start a Christian school in Champion? And long story short, my dad and his brother, who was a teacher, started a Christian school in Champion. And that first year we had 13 students from grade 1 to grade 10. And I was the oldest. We used a curriculum from the States called ACE. And it wasn't just a curriculum, it was kind of a one-room schoolhouse format. And I loved it. The highlight every year was regional convention. And that was kind of a competition, an Olympics of sorts, where students from all the AC schools in Western Canada could come and compete in different events. And there were an amazing number of categories, everything from athletics to sewing, to arts events, music events, you name it. I mean, every student in our school had to pick something to compete in at convention. And by this time I had discovered that I liked the dramatic events. Apparently Mrs. Noah wasn't just an anomaly, because I could get on stage and ham it up and everybody seemed to be amazed. Especially in our little church, in our little school, I was the star, right? And so I was in all the musical productions and the church plays and stuff. And so I, at convention, did all the dramatic events, like expressive reading and illustrated storytelling. And I also entered a lot of the writing events. I wrote poetry in competition and those kinds of things. But I remember how well we did at convention. Our little school, all of our students had to go and compete. And some years it seemed like we cleaned up. It was amazing. If you won at regional convention, then you were eligible to go to the International Student Convention in the States, where all of the winners from all of the regional conventions went and competed in their events. And so our little school would road trip down to the States, and we would compete there, those of us who had won at regional. And I'll never forget the one experience I had at International Convention. I had written a dramatic monologue, and I'd won at regional. So I took it down to International Convention, and when I had written this dramatic monologue, I had thought to myself, you know, there are going to be a ton of other students competing in this category. I need to stand out somehow. So I'd written an introduction to the monologue that was quite unique. And when I performed it for the judges at International Convention, it was very effective. Because what happened was I began my dramatic monologue, but almost immediately I stopped and I looked right at one of the judges and I took a step towards him and I said, is that your own face? And I remember when I did that at Internationals, the judge like reacted, like he couldn't believe that I had broken my monologue to ask him this weird question, but it was part of the monologue. And so then I went on and performed the rest of my monologue, which was called Faces. And lo and behold, to my absolute amazement, I won at internationals. And not only did I win, but some of the winners at internationals in select categories performed their events on stage for everyone, like at the gala event at the end of convention. So there were like hundreds, thousands, I don't know, there were millions of people there. And I got to perform Faces on stage, and I'll never forget. I don't actually remember performing it. I remember walking up on stage, and then I assume I performed it, but then I remember everyone standing to their feet and giving me this standing ovation. And it was the most surreal experience of my life. And then I remember walking off stage, and there was my dad standing there applauding with tears in his eyes and this look of pride on his face that I can't describe. And I'll never forget that. It's just such a picture to me of how God feels about us. And so those are some wonderful memories I have of convention and of Hope Christian School in Champion. Some of you that are watching this attended Hope. And so, yay! And thanks for listening to my reminiscing about convention. And next time, I'm really going to try and finish talking about Champion, because I can't stay here forever. I mean, I've got so much more to say. Oh, okay, see you next time.